The story starts with several heavily armed soldiers tracking down a little kid inside what looked like an old house. Suddenly, one of the soldiers spotted their target and quickly called the others, pointing his flashlight at the frightened boy. Right after, the boy tried to escape by running, and the soldier ordered the others to throw a net at him. The scene faded out, and then we saw another place where a little boy suddenly woke up as bright sunlight hit his face. That little kid, who had lived under an abandoned building, found the place he was in now very strange. The flat floor, the clean clothes he was wearing, and the food that came out on schedule. Everything seemed odd to him. So, the child spent most of their time on the nearby hill. While he was there, other kids approached him and asked why he was alone and if he wanted to play with them. But the boy panicked when he saw them, and the newcomers decided to ignore him and leave. Unbeknownst to him, a red-haired lady who was in a wheelchair was watching him from inside the building. That lady asked another lady if the little kid could speak, and the other replied that he couldn't. The other lady then said it didn't seem to be a disability before noting that he just hadn't learned how to do it. Still, it looked like he could understand some words. According to her, the rescue team had said that the kid had probably grown up with animals. After hearing that explanation, the red-haired lady said it was literally Mowgli, which confused the other lady, since the name didn't ring a bell with her. The lady then began to laugh while saying that the young people like her wouldn't understand, which was understandable. Afterward, the lady said that it was from a story before the kid arrived. Meanwhile, the little boy watched another kid receive an envelope and wondered what it was. Then a little girl beside the young kid, as if guessing what he was thinking, replied that it was a letter from a sponsor, before adding that sometimes they sent gifts like that, too. The little girl then asked the little boy if he had a sponsor before explaining that a sponsor was an adult who took care of you. She also added that adults were kind, but another kid immediately retorted that adults were bad, and a third said they were good. Right after, the little girl tried to reach an agreement, saying that half the adults were kind and half were bad, and the other kids quickly agreed. Afterward, she explained to the little boy that a kid named Matthew had gotten a huge toy from his sponsor and that he wouldn't stop bragging about it. Moreover, the toy was for hitting people on the head. Afterward, the little girl said that Lily's sponsor had bought her clothes, a dress with tons of frills, which the little girl found very gross. She also said that Joe had even talked with his sponsor, which was really disgusting. Finally, she said she didn't have a sponsor because she didn't need one, since her mom had promised to go and get her. Apparently, her mom had told the little girl that she would go after she slept for just 100 nights. Oak, who is going to be the one telling her the truth? She quickly added that 100 nights would pass in the blink of an eye, and then hoped she would go soon. While hearing that explanation, the young boy blinked since it felt as if the stars were passing by quickly. Sometime later, a female teacher told the kids that some people had arrived from the far reaches of space, which was how they had all become friends. Nevertheless, at the playground, a kid wearing glasses and looking like a smartapants told the other kids that the teacher had lied to them. After hearing that, one of the kids asked why the teacher would lie to them, and the glasses-wearing kid replied that she had done it because she thought they were babies. Suddenly, the kid wearing glasses took out a huge book and opened it, drawing the other kids' attention. In fact, one of them asked where he had gotten it, to which he replied that he had gotten it from the principal's study. He then began to read its content. According to the book, a long time ago aliens arrived on Earth. Afterward, humans had fought them with their super-duper strong weapon called HAEK, but then one alien ate it, and the humans surrendered. Sometime later, one woman called the young boy, whom I will now consider the protagonist, and, while giving him an envelope, told him that he had received a letter. The woman then added that he had gotten a sponsor before asking him if he was happy. Nevertheless, instead of replying, our protagonist turned around and looked at the little girl who had told him she didn't need a sponsor because her mom would return after 100 nights. At that moment, the little girl was not happy at all. In fact, she was crying. Our protagonist followed the little girl, and when he found her, she was sitting on the floor, hugging her knees while crying, but still she yelled at him, demanding that he go away. However, he didn't listen and grabbed some stuff before offering it to her. Nevertheless, she told her that those things were all things that he cherished. Still, she took the cookie he had offered to her and said that, in reality, 100 nights had long passed. She also told him that although her mom believed she couldn't count to 100, the little girl could, which was why she was currently alone. After hearing that, he silently sat beside her, which ended up touching her. Afterward, she showed the cookie she had taken to him and asked him if she could really eat it. Right after, she began to move the cookie in front of our protagonist, who ended up drooling. Some time later, they were beneath a table hanging out, and the girl looked happy when she asked him if he could read. Nevertheless, when they opened the envelope and began to read the letter, it just said, "Hello there," which surprised the little girl, who was expecting something else. I was also expecting something else, by the way. However, our protagonist saw that there was something else inside the envelope, and that thing had fallen to the floor. Right after, he took the object, a flower, and began to contemplate it. That night, while he was in bed, he was still looking at the flower. It was then that he decided to smell it, which somehow made him feel elated. The following day, our protagonist received another letter, and the red-haired lady said that he was very lucky. After all, he had also received a lot of presents, and most of them were very cool. Still, the little girl said that all the letters only had simple words. Afterward, the kids began wondering out loud what kind of person they were, why they were being so nice, and if they were incredibly rich or if they had some ulterior motive. After all, they believed that adults were nice when they felt guilty about something. At that moment, our protagonist, whose name was Mori, tried to eat a crayon, but the other kids managed to stop him in time. Right after, the little girl explained to the young boy how the crayon should be used, which made our protagonist feel amazed. Sometime later, some people in the, I am going to assume it is an orphanage at this point, were commenting that since the weather was warm, they should do laundry. Besides, it seemed that the kids were very happy helping with that. In fact, every one of them had been placed inside a wooden bucket that had dirty clothes, so they were basically stomping on the clothes as if they were making wine, and they were truly enjoying the process. One little girl even commented that their toes were all wrinkly, to which the others agreed. Of course, there was an exception. Our protagonist's female friend looked unamused while saying that the others were idiots since nothing was amazing about what they were doing. However, our protagonist simply ignored her remarks and kept enjoying stomping on the clothes, and the little girl ended up telling him that it was amazing. Nevertheless, she began to get worried and warned him, saying that if he stepped too hard, it would all splash, but before she could finish the sentence, a woman arrived running while calling the little girl's name. Obviously, when Rodina noticed it, she immediately ran toward the woman, knocking over her wooden bucket in the process. Shortly after, the little girl hugged her mom tightly, which shocked our protagonist. Sometime later, Rodina, who had one suitcase and one bag beside her as if she were preparing to leave that place, was telling our protagonist that he shouldn't eat too fast and get indigestion. Right after, she gave him the bag and a pair of shoes while telling him that he should stop going barefoot anywhere. Finally, she hugged him tightly and told him that he should be happy, which made our protagonist feel elated. Afterward, she left with her mom, with all the kids sending her off. As for our protagonist, he resumed his routine of sitting on the hill without wearing shoes. Although the absence of a friend had left a big hole, he wasn't lonely because the letters and gifts his sponsor sent him were by his side. For example, the red cloak he received was as soft as warm sunlight, the colorful crayons and talking doll were so much fun, and the kind letters smelled of fragrant wildflowers. He then suddenly recalled the question the kids were asking out loud before. They wondered what kind of people the sponsors were and why they were being so nice. He also recalled that they had said that adults were nice when they felt guilty about something. Then a wild idea appeared in his mind, and our protagonist began to wonder if his sponsor could be his mom. Then, one night, the child packed his things in the bag his friend had given him, and saying goodbye to the orphanage in the distance, he left the place and set off on an unknown path to meet his mom. Well, I guess this is where the story truly begins. Sometime later, the child woke up inside a wagon on a moving train. The train he had boarded without thinking was already taking him on a long journey to meet his mother. Later, he got off the train in the middle of a desert and began to walk. This time, he was at least wearing the shoes Rodina gave him. Then, while being near the top of a hill, he spotted a group of people getting closer. They looked like bandits, were armed, and were riding motorbikes. Unfortunately, they also spotted him, and despite his attempt to escape, he was quickly encircled by the thugs. However, unbeknownst to everybody, a person was watching the whole scene atop his motorbike at the top of a nearby hill. Back with our protagonist, one of the thugs asked if the little boy was human, which surprised the others. They just couldn't believe that our protagonist was human because he was too short. They then began to wonder if they still could sell him, and one of them even suggested eating a little bit of him. After all, since he was very small, nobody would notice. He added that one leg was enough. Right after, a humanoid creature appeared and landed a powerful blow to the ground while asking the thugs who had permitted them to touch the boy. That made them feel terrified, and they began to apologize to the newcomer, who happened to be their boss. The humanoid creature then said that something the size of our protagonist wouldn't even reach the liver, but before he could say something else, someone shot one of the thugs, killing him by blowing his head off. Right after, the person who was watching the scene from a distance and who had killed the thug drove his bike toward the group. After seeing that person closer, the thugs identified him as a rider and started to panic, but the boss tried to calm them down by saying that it was only one of them. Okay, he might look horrendous, but he at least knows how to lead. The leader's words were effective, and the thugs opened fire on the rider, who showed superb skill to dodge the bullets. After seeing that, the leader cursed and threw himself toward the rider. Shortly after, an explosion occurred, but when the leader thought that he had gotten his enemy, the rider jumped over him and went toward our protagonist. The rider then obliterated the remaining thugs and finally reached the little boy. He then began to rant, but he stopped in the middle of it after seeing the little boy in front of him. It was then that it was revealed that the rider had 5 eyes along with 2 horns. Well, you can't judge a book by its cover, I guess. This guy looks creepier than the leader of the thugs. The rider, who had red skin and white hair and a ponytail, which made him resemble a demon, called a floating robot that quickly reported that our protagonist was a human infant. Almost immediately, the rider's expression softened, and he greeted the little kid with a wide smile.
Hello there.
He then added that our protagonist shouldn't worry anymore because he was there, and even introduced the floating robot, whose name was Aya, to the little boy, saying that he had created it. Then, while the little kid looked mesmerized by Aya, the demon-like creature said that our protagonist looked like he was lost before adding that he was going to take the little boy home, which of course made our protagonist feel elated. The rider then asked the little kid to follow him, and while walking toward his bike, the rider began to show his true colors by thinking about what he should do with our protagonist. He even considered eating him since eating humans was not illegal. However, socially, it was considered taboo to eat them, and our protagonist was not suitable for eating. Although it might be tender, there was too little meat. He even considered that they would only get about 300, which was not bad money. He then considered selling it to the caves alive since some crazy folks might want it as a toy. After all, for something so scruffy, its clothes looked pretty nice. He also considered the option of putting it up for auction, but at that instant, the creature noticed a symbol in the bag the Rodina had given to Mori. Right after, he took a closer look at the little boy's cloak and immediately panicked. Afterward, he nervously remarked that it was getting late and apologized to our protagonist while mounting his bike, saying that he was just too busy. Right after, he added that since our protagonist could find his way back on his own, there was no issue if he left. Almost immediately, he drove away on his bike as if he were escaping from a monster. Once he was far away, he began to curse, saying that he had seen a certain symbol and that he had almost ruined his life back there. Even Aya told him that what he was doing was what they called chickening out. When an AI mocks you, you are doing something terribly wrong. That pissed him off, but he still admitted that he had been frightened by the experience. The AI then gave him a glass of water, which he appreciated, but it was then that the true terror began because at that moment he noticed that our protagonist was riding the bike with him as a stowaway.
En ese momento, Cell sintió el verdadero terror.
He then asked Mori how he had gotten on his bike before vehemently demanding that he get off. Shortly after, the bike hit a small stone and overturned, sending the creature, our protagonist, and even the stone flying. Shortly after, the creature came back to his senses and noticed several sheets of paper nearby. Those were the letters that our protagonist's sponsor had sent him back at the orphanage. The humanoid demon-like creature began to check the sheets of paper, but before he could read them, our protagonist appeared before him, freaking him out. The creature then said that the little boy was finally awake. At that moment, Aya reported that the AI was worried the rider's body temperature might drop, so the human next to him had covered him with some items. The floating robot also reported that it had started a fire. After hearing that, the creature thanked them, and the floating robot said that he seemed to need some hydration, and he agreed before saying that they should drink some water. Almost immediately, our protagonist grabbed the rider's glass, but when he was closer, he tripped and ended up throwing the glass at the creature, wetting his face. That made the little boy nervous, and he began to search in his bag for something to dry the creature, while the creature thought that there was no doubt about the little kid's identity because of the symbol he had seen before. That symbol represented a being called Patch, and apparently, our protagonist was one of the 7 fingers of him, the beginning and end of the universe. After all, only the owner of the patch and those he permitted could use that symbol. Therefore, for others to carelessly threaten them was like hastening their death to tomorrow. Right after, the writer thought that the kid was a human who seemed somewhat lacking. Moreover, the symbol was engraved on most of the items, and the sheets of paper he saw were so expensive that they were worth a month's food budget. Then, an idea came to the writer's mind: if they'd safely delivered the child, they could surely claim a reward, and that idea seemed to please him. Right after, Aya reported that its battery was running low, and he told the floating robot to go get some rest. Sometime later, they were walking through the desert while the writer told Mori that people like the creature, who was a lifesaver, were hard to come by in life. Not to mention that he was the only one who knew that area well. Wow, props to the little lizards that were kissing at the forefront. It's so rare to see a romantic kiss in a manhwa that, at this point, I am willing to take whatever I can get. the writer didn't forget to let our protagonist know how incredible the good deed he was doing at that moment, but when he was about to ask the little boy to put him on good terms with his mom when they arrived, the humanoid creature noticed that Mori was focused on something on the ground. Obviously, that bothered the writer, but he told himself that he had to be patient and asked our protagonist why he was not focusing on what he was saying. Nevertheless, when the little boy turned to look at him, the writer noticed that the kid was trying to eat an insect, and that terrified him. Almost immediately, he grabbed the kid and made him spit the insect out. Luckily, he managed to do it, and right after, he snapped at Mori, telling him that eating something like that could kill him. But our protagonist was not taking the writer seriously, which pissed him off. Still, the guy managed to regain his composure and explain to the young boy that when the legs of a bug have a bluish tint like the one he was trying to eat, it might be poisonous. Fortunately, that one didn't seem to be dangerous. He also explained that if the roots of the mushrooms were swollen and round, or if the bug turned blue when threatened, they were poisonous. When the kid let him know that he had understood the explanation, the writer sighed in relief, thinking that there shouldn't be any more trouble. However, he soon found out how naive that thought had been since our protagonist was just unable to avoid danger, which was beginning to give the guy a serious headache. In fact, at some point, he began to wonder what the heck he was doing. A certain night, the writer saw our protagonist drawing, and he got closer before asking Mori what he was drawing. Sadly, when the little kid showed him the drawings and began to tell him their names, the writer was not capable of understanding what our protagonist was saying. Shortly after, the writer noticed two things. First, he noticed that the suitcase had the name, Mori, written on it, and he wondered if that was the kid's name. Second, he saw one of the drawings and asked the kid what the black thing in it was. "Simon, it's so obvious that it is Yo! The drawing even shows Aya floating near the guy!" Right after, Mori replied by pointing at him, which shocked the writer. Afterward, the writer grabbed the drawing and stared at it for a long time. After all, that had been the first time someone had drawn him. At that moment, Aya interrupted his thoughts by saying that the writer seemed to be in a good mood, which pissed the guy off and triggered his tsundere mode. However, the floating robot ignored the other's reaction and said that the flat thing around should be him. Immediately thereafter, the AI said that he would give Mori 50 points since he showed excellent observation skills, but lacked descriptive ability. Right after, the writer told our protagonist that he should draw him more impressively, to which Aya replied that creating something from nothing was difficult. Still, both began to give some pointers to the little boy. The following day, they arrived near a hill, but when the writer was about to explain to Mori what they would find after crossing it, he noticed that the little boy was running in the opposite direction and started calling him. Nevertheless, when he was telling him that if he didn't hurry, he would leave Mori behind, the writer noticed that the little boy was apparently talking to another strange creature that looked like a baby dragon, but with no wings. The writer then wondered if that was a wild animal, but before any of them could react, a bigger creature appeared in front of the first one and attacked our protagonist with powerful flames, which shocked the guy. Oh, it seems this story is going to end sooner than expected. Almost immediately, the demon, yes, I am going to call him a demon since the author hasn't honored us with the name of that character, took out his gun while asking what the heck they were doing. After seeing that, the second dragon-like creature covered the first one, trying to protect it. However, the writer, feeling despair, ignored the creatures and went straight to the flames, trying to see how our protagonist was. He believed that the child would be burned black, leaving no trace. But at that moment, the cloak fluttered, and it made the flames disappear one by one, just like a magical cloak, revealing the little kid who looked perfectly fine. Obviously, that left the writer and even the two creatures completely flabbergasted. Luckily, the demon managed to react fast and immediately asked him if he was fine before adding that he had nearly fallen over in shock. Right after, he pointed his gun at the creatures while calling them bastards. At that moment, the older and bigger creature began to talk, but the writer couldn't understand its language. Still, the demon asked if the creature was pretending to be the victim after setting the fire itself. The demon totally snapped and yelled at the older creature that its kid was not the only one there, because our protagonist was also a child, and the older creature almost turned him into barbecue. However, before the fight escalated, Aya warned them that something was approaching from below. Almost immediately, a huge creature emerged from the ground. The creature looked like a mix between a dragon without wings and a dinosaur. After seeing the big monster, the demon cursed, thinking that the creature before him was an adult. He also thought that he had to send Mori back first. The creature then moved, and the demon thought it was going to attack. However, that didn't happen. Instead, the big monster began to pat the older creature's head before making it bow to the demon and our protagonist, which shocked the former. The demon then yelled at the trio, while looking embarrassed, that he wouldn't let them off easy, which made Aya ask him what the heck he was doing. However, Mori simply ignored the others and approached the little creature that took out a glowing crystal and gave it to our protagonist. Right after, the little kid began to search his bag and then gave the little creature something that looked like a flower. Afterward, the little creature and our protagonist began to run in circles around the demon, who began to ask them what they were doing. After the strange family left, our protagonist looked somewhat sad, perhaps because the huge monster seemed to be the mother of the other two creatures. The demon noticed it and asked Mori if he knew that he had almost died that day and had survived because of the cloak he was wearing. He then added that the cloak seemed to be a magic one, making the fire disappear. He believed that it had good protection and that it could probably regulate temperature as well, which was why Mori should be grateful to whoever had sent it to him. After hearing that, the little kid's eyes began to sparkle, and he immediately started running around the demon. That night, while they were camping, the writer asked Aya to show him the data on humans. The AI quickly obeyed, and after checking all the information, the writer said that it figured before adding that the little kid should have a mother too. Aya didn't understand what he had said, and the demon explained that unlike them, who divided, humans reproduced. Long ago, when the Masters of Earth briefly left for space and returned, many life forms had been born in the meantime. Among them, an animal with high greed and strong violence, humans. They wanted to believe everything was theirs, from a single blade of grass beneath their feet to other humans. Their numbers were gradually decreasing and disappearing, and the demon thought that, seeing how things had come to that, it seemed that the powerful ones didn't care much about their offspring. Afterward, the demon touched the little kid's hand, and our protagonist, who was sleeping, grabbed one of the writer's fingers while showing a tender smile, which touched the demon deeply, to the point of making him tease Mori by poking the young boy's cheeks. Meanwhile, in an unknown place, someone was saying that something was certain. That person then added that the forest surrounding the shelter was all bio-detected, so they couldn't have missed it. Right after, he said that it was probably because of that cloak before saying that he would find it without fail. The little kid found himself in the middle of a prairie and began to look around when suddenly he noticed something that left him astonished. The next moment, Mori found himself in the back seat of the writer's motorcycle, and once the demon noticed our protagonist was awake, he told him to take a look since they had arrived in the city. The city was built within several rock formations, but the little boy didn't have a chance to appreciate it because several strange-looking creatures surrounded him and began to praise him for being too cute. They were amazed by how small and adorable he was, which made Mori feel overwhelmed. Right after, an annoyed writer grabbed Mori while asking the others if they had any idea of how much that cost before adding that if they wanted to see the kid, they had to pay. Then, he just shooed them away. Still, that made the demon realize that Mori stood out more than he expected. Even Aya recognized that the little kid was very popular. Later, they entered a bar, and the creatures there immediately began to create a fuss, asking the writer if he was the owner of the child, and if they could touch him, which caught the demon by surprise. Then, a creature with strange horns asked the writer what was going on, to which the demon replied by saying the other's name, Valentine. Valentine then asked the writer what his motives were and when he had decided to raise a human. Almost immediately, the demon said that the kid was not food and added that the other shouldn't get any strange ideas, to which Valentine replied by asking who ate humans those days before adding that it was barbaric. The writer then showed Valentine the seal on an envelope and asked if the other had seen it anywhere, to which Valentine replied, looking surprised, that the symbol was for payment, before adding that he had seen it once before during a trade negotiation. Finally, Valentine said that they were probably in the city, which shocked the writer, who asked if that was where they lived, to which the other replied by confirming it. Moreover, Valentine added that the little kid had black hair, and the man he had bargained with had also black hair.
Coincidence? I think not!
The writer then asked why they would go there, and Valentine replied that there was a reason for that. Right after, the writer decided to change the subject and told Valentine that he wanted the accommodation, the power bars, and the solar charging port, to which Valentine replied that it would cost 50, which shocked the demon. The demon then snapped and yelled at Valentine that he shouldn't raise the price on him before adding that 35 was enough. That made Valentine snap, and he yelled at the writer that what he had just said was nonsense before asking him if he knew how expensive that had become in recent times. The writer then yelled at Valentine if he believed that he could trick him again, and Valentine yelled at the writer that he had been too lenient with him the last time. Meanwhile, our protagonist was ignoring the verbal fight while playing with Aya. Finally, Valentine made a compromise and said that he would make it 42 since he couldn't go any lower than that. Afterward, the writer began to check his funds to see if he could afford that price, but it looked like it wasn't the case. So, Aya said that since he had a battery with 70% charge left, they could sell it, to which the demon replied that it would be a waste to do that. The AI then suggested selling Mori's stuff, and the writer asked the floating robot if he was telling him to starve to death. In the end, he took out some stuff, including the crystal that the small creature had given to our protagonist back in the desert, and asked how much Valentine would pay for them. Valentine quickly took the crystal and said that it was a Thomas stone, which shocked the writer. Valentine then asked the demon if he knew what it was. Then Valentine broke it into 3 parts, which made Mori go berserk. Valentine then told the kid to calm down and watch closely. Right after, the 3 pieces joined back and the crystal became whole again. Afterward, Valentine asked the demon what he thought before adding that it was fixed because it had fixed itself. Moreover, since it fed on light, it emitted a glow at night. Obviously, both the demon and our protagonist were flabbergasted while looking at the crystal. The writer then asked if it was expensive, to which Valentine replied that it had become so popular in recent times that it was practically worthless, which disappointed the demon, who clicked his tongue while giving the crystal back to Mori. How can something that has become popular be worthless? I don't get that logic. Unfortunately, when the writer threw the crystal, it landed away from where they were, and our protagonist quickly went to grab it. But when he finally reached it, a very scary creature was also trying to grab it. The tall creature that seemed to wear a mask said that our protagonist was very cute, and when Mori tried to walk away, the creature grabbed him by his cloak and threw him through a strange portal in its belly. The creature then checked its surroundings to see if it had been noticed, while our protagonist, who was in some kind of pocket dimension, screamed for help. Back with the demon, he noticed that our protagonist had disappeared and began looking for him. He then looked at the kidnapper and thought that there was something strange about him. The writer called him, but the other ran away. However, Aya managed to scan him just before he jumped off a platform in order to avoid the demon. The writer and the kidnapper looked at each other, and almost immediately, the AI said that a life form with a temperature of 36.8 Tc had been detected in the pocket. That was enough proof for the demon to confirm that the strange creature had kidnapped our protagonist. Right after, he realized that he needed to get ahead and block them and ordered Aya to go up before he began to run toward the kidnapper. Aya began scanning the town and found 14 possible routes, but based on speed and direction, the AI said that it seemed that the kidnapper would take Route 2. Immediately thereafter, Aya activated its GPS mode and began to guide the rider through that route. The demon was so focused on finding the kidnapper that he just crushed a sand sculpture that one of the residents had built after half a year of hard work. Shortly after, the floating robot told the rider that he should take Route 11. Then Aya reported that he was about to arrive at the predicted destination point. The problem was that he would have to make a leap of faith in order to reach the kidnapper, who was beneath the demoness. The rider couldn't believe that the AI was expecting him to do it, but when Aya told him that he had to jump right away, he did it without hesitation. And the plan succeeded because the demon appeared before the kidnapper. Moreover, the rider's motorcycle had also arrived, blocking the strange creature's escape route. After finding himself with no way out, the kidnapper asked the rider who he was and why he was chasing him so menacingly. Nevertheless, the demon ignored those questions and asked out loud to Mori if he was there before asking our protagonist to answer if he could hear him. Right after, Aya began scanning the voice, and shortly after, the AI reported that it was Mori with 98% certainty. That made the rider yell at the kidnapper, demanding that he return our protagonist. However, the strange-looking man feigned ignorance. However, that only pissed the demon off more, and he told the kidnapper to stop playing dumb, before adding that he knew he had a tiny human in his pocket. Still, the strange-looking creature replied that he had no idea what the demon was talking about before adding that what he had in his pocket was something he had been raising all along. At that moment, Aya reported that Mori's fear level was rising, and that made the rider enraged. The demon then took out his gun and demanded that the kidnapper stop talking nonsense and take our protagonist out quickly. Nevertheless, the strange-looking creature refused, saying that the human was too cute and that he was going to raise him. Obviously, that pissed the demon, but before he could speak, the strange creature told him that he knew he was Rider, before adding that he was a simple-minded outlaw with an illegal creation to boot. Oh, it seems that Rider is the demon's name. But let's wait for some confirmation. It seems the demon was quite infamous, which is why the strange creature believed he was unfit to raise a human. After all, he was too dangerous, and the strange creature believed that he could raise him with more love. The creature then asked the rider if he was keeping that child, because he liked him, before assuming that it was the case, and adding that he was no different. Almost immediately, the rider proposed a deal to the creature. If the creature were so confident, it should ask our protagonist directly who he would rather be with. The strange creature considered the proposal for a moment before refusing it by saying that the little kid's opinion was not important. Right after, the demon pointed his gun at the creature, but the latter said that firing a gun in town would put him on the wanted list. Nevertheless, the writer simply replied, while releasing his killing intent, that being on the wanted list was not important. Meanwhile, our protagonist was scared and kept screaming, asking for help. After all, there seemed to be no way out of that dark, narrow space. However, at that moment, someone spoke to him from the darkness, and the kid quickly realized that it had been the doll his mother had given him. The doll said that he shouldn't forget to use the bathroom before bed, which confused our protagonist at first. Back outside the pocket dimension, the strange creature told the writer that he would be generous and compromise. Before making an outrageous proposal, the demon could have the head, while the creature would take the body. While the creature was trying to sweet-talk the writer, the demon was thinking that the power was enough to blow off the other's head. Nevertheless, he also thought that if the creature's pocket were muscle, it would contract strongly the moment it was hit, and the demon was not sure if the cloak would block the compression, too. In the end, the writer's hands were tied, which pissed him off. He truly wanted to somehow get Mori out first. At that moment, the creature noticed that the demon was spacing out and asked him if he was listening to him. In fact, when the other didn't reply, the creature got mad and asked the writer how he had dared to ignore him. Right after, something weird happened. Piss began to run through the creature's legs straight to the floor, and when the creature noticed that, it felt very disgusted, to the point of opening its pocket. At that moment, the writer could see our protagonist peeing, as it was the most natural thing to do in the world. The creature then expelled our protagonist from its pocket, and the little boy landed at the writer's feet. Of course, the demon was very pleased with that development. On the other hand, the creature was extremely disgusted and angry because it considered a filthy disgrace the fact that our protagonist had peed inside its pocket. By the way, at this point, I don't consider that pocket to be a pocket dimension. It seems to be a special internal cavity that the creature has. Nevertheless, when the creature tried to grab our protagonist, the writer shot, blowing one of its arms away. Obviously, the creature began to scream, but almost immediately, it found the cold cannon of the writer's gun almost touching its forehead. At that moment, the demon told the creature that if it touched the little kid with those filthy hands one more time, it would have to crawl like a snake from that moment onward. Suddenly, some sounds could be heard, and the writer clicked his tongue before saying that some people were too quick, to which Aya replied that the gunshots seemed to have been too loud. Right after, the demon mounted his motorcycle and left the place. Shortly after, he began mocking the creature, imitating it when it felt disgusted by the pee. The AI then said that the method used by our protagonist to escape had been ingenious, and the writer praised the little boy too. Even the doll told him that it was very proud of him. Of course, the boy felt elated after hearing all that. The AI then asked which direction they should go, and the writer replied that, given the current situation, the route they were taking was the fastest one. So, they were heading to the Wells Cradle. By the way, props to our protagonist, who was using the writer's horns as a handlebar. He surely knows how to enjoy a ride. Of course, when the demon noticed what the little kid was doing, he didn't like it at all and began to demand that he get down, and Aya had to intervene to scold them by saying that they should remain still while he was driving. Sometime later, they arrived at a valley, and our protagonist was fascinated by the scenery. Their journey continued, and the kid, the demon, and the floating robot went through a forest, a place that looked like an abandoned castle, more prairies, and even a misty and dangerous swamp filled with deadly monsters. They also went through underground tunnels and had to run for their lives while being hunted by some ugly flying creatures. Still, our protagonist didn't miss his chances to play some pranks on the writer, perhaps to lighten the mood a little. Nevertheless, not all was dangerous or bad. There were awesome moments, such as riding the motorcycle while watching flying whales above them in the middle of the night. In fact, the demon used the autonomous driving mode feature of Aya to take Mori in his hands, so the little boy could watch the whales a little bit closer, which made our protagonist feel as if he could touch them. That night, Mori dreamed of his mother, who warmly embraced him while calling him her round one. The next instant, the little kid woke up and found himself in the demon's embrace. The writer then asked him if he was awake before blaming Aya for that. Of course, the AI wouldn't allow his reputation to be tarnished, and he quickly retorted that he was being careful before adding that if the demon were unsatisfied, he should drive himself. Obviously, the demon didn't agree with that because autonomous driving was sweet, to which Aya replied that the writer couldn't do anything without him. And the demon, who didn't like others to have the last word, immediately retorted, saying that he had created the floating robot. Sometime later, they arrived at some snowy mountains. In fact, the whole valley before them was covered in snow, and the writer said that the place hadn't changed. At that moment, Aya asked if they would walk quietly from there. The demon then replied that they had seen them moving at night before adding that if those guys woke up and broke their legs, they would have to take the long way around. Right after, the writer told Mori that he would show him something amazing. Then Aya said the Mori was perhaps a bit over-equipped. In fact, the AI wondered if our protagonist could even walk while wearing all that stuff. Not to mention that he also had that super defensive cloak too. However, the demon replied that it was fine since you never know what could happen. Besides, he believed it would be fun to just roll the little kid up into a ball, and the floating robot immediately replied that what he was suggesting was simply abuse. Unfortunately, while the writer was nagging about turning our protagonist into a ball at least once, Aya interrupted him, saying that something was approaching at high speed. After hearing that, he asked if they were hunters sent from town before asking for their speed, to which the AI replied that it was 491.52 Pusius, which shocked the demon. Almost immediately, the writer began to feel uneasy, and he said that he had a bad feeling about that before announcing a change of plans. They wouldn't walk but would continue on the bike instead. How to say you are scared without saying you are scared. By the way, saying you have a bad feeling doesn't count as saying you are scared. Immediately thereafter, the demon started his bike and ran away. However, shortly after, Aya reported that the distance was decreasing before adding that there were 2 minutes and 45 seconds until arrival. Time passed and the AI reported that there were 53 seconds until arrival, and almost immediately, Aya could see what was chasing them. Still, the rider didn't give up and kept pressing the gas, trying to escape. However, the person who was chasing them used some kind of spell and forced them to stop. Right after, he finally revealed himself as a mysterious man wearing a wide-brimmed hat and a white coat. He also wore what seemed to be a neoprene wetsuit and a white mask. The demon was terrified while thinking that he couldn't believe what had just happened. After all, he had never heard of a hunter who could handle black holes. He refused to believe that they had hired someone like that just because he had fired a few shots in town. Well, some people just like to use a sledgehammer to crack a nut, dearie. Meanwhile, the so-called hunter was simply standing there idly, waiting perhaps for the other party to make the first move. As for the demon, he asked Aya what his chances of winning were if he went all out, to which the AI replied, 16%. Of course, that shocked the rider, who was clearly expecting to have higher odds. But his hopes were even more crushed when the floating robot added that there was also a 7% margin of error in case of natural disasters. However, despite not liking his odds, he admitted that Aya's probabilities were always accurate, which meant that the hunter in front of them was definitely strong. So, he thought that the best course of action would be to avoid a head-on fight. Right after, he made his decision and pointed his gun at the hunter. Then, he shot at the other and ran away. Almost immediately, he asked Aya to release the limiter, and a warning message appeared in the bike, while the AI reported that he was accessing the overclocking mode, before adding that he should be careful of fractures due to impact. He then took a shot at the mountains, and after seeing the result, he said that it was responding before telling Aya that they would use maximum output to go ahead at full speed. He also added that if they could just make it to the bridge, they would manage somehow. Afterward, an avalanche started, which left our protagonist amazed at the view. The downside was that the avalanche threatened to bury them, which was why the demon was squeezing every ounce of speed from the bike while telling Mori to hold on. Shortly after, they finally could see the bridge, but the demon also noticed that the hunter was getting closer, so the rider fired his gun at the mountains while the hunter was preparing to use the same spell he had used before. Nevertheless, it was then that the rider realized that something told him that the hunter had no intention of attacking, so they just needed to reach the bridge. Sadly, the next instant, the hunter somehow appeared just beside him. In fact, he was crouching on the bike as if he were another passenger. Then, before the rider could react, the hunter grabbed him by the neck, pulling him out of the driver's seat. Still, the demon was not planning to go down without a fight and began to pull the trigger of his gun while they were crossing the bridge. At that moment, the hunter noticed our protagonist, whose expression showed some fear. Then, he changed his plan and threw the rider off the bike and off the bridge. Nevertheless, the demon didn't panic and simply told the hunter that it seemed he was not familiar with that place. Immediately thereafter, a flying whale emerged from below the bridge, and the rider quickly grabbed onto it while Aya retrieved the bike by using teleportation. At that moment, the hunter simply silently glanced at them escaping while mounting that flying whale. Sometime later, the rider woke up and asked if he had passed out, to which Aya replied that he was short of breath, probably because of the sudden increase in altitude. Right after, he asked how Mori was, to which the floating robot replied that the little boy was fine before adding that waking the sleeping whale had been a good strategy. After all, when the cradle became uncomfortable, it would move to the ravine. The rider then asked where they were, and Aya replied that they were in the city. After hearing that, the rider said that they should go to the entrance, but Aya warned him against that. After all, they didn't know if the warrant had reached the city, which was why it would be better if he disguised himself. He then said that they would change their hair and clothes. The demon changed his hairstyle and told Mori that they should go, but when the little kid saw him, he reacted oddly, which made the rider wonder out loud what was with our protagonist. In fact, when he grabbed him, Mori began to struggle to get free, which startled the demon. The writer then asked the kid what had gotten into him all of a sudden before telling him that it was Ryder. We finally have confirmation that the dude's name is Ryder. I will use it from this moment onward. Aya then said that the little boy didn't seem to recognize him because his hair had changed. That pissed Ryder, who asked what he was supposed to do. Afterward, they found a very weird solution. They disguised themselves as a four-armed creature with two heads, Mori and Aya, which almost immediately proved to be a very bad idea since they could barely walk without selling themselves. Sometime later, they arrived at a place where a strange-looking robot welcomed them to the city before asking them how it might assist them. Right after, Aya replied that they were there to meet the patch, and the robot asked them to show it the insignia. Then, somehow, they managed to take out one of the envelopes the sponsor had sent to our protagonist. After seeing it, the robot made a huge hologram appear above them before asking them which one of those they were looking for. The hologram somewhat represented a solar system, and it was referring to the planets that were orbiting. That shocked Ryder, because he was not expecting that. It was then that he realized that from the owner to the members, they all could use the patch's insignia. Unfortunately, he hadn't thought they could be scattered in different places. Of course, he had no idea of what they should do. However, before Aya or Ryder could reply, our protagonist took out one of the flowers the sponsor had sent him and showed it to the robot, which immediately said that there was only one person for that. Right after, a black door appeared nearby, and Aya and Ryder began discussing what it could be since it looked like some kind of portal. They even walked around it to watch it from all sides. After seeing their reactions, the robot told them that they shouldn't worry because they would arrive no matter which direction they walked, to which Aya replied by thanking the robot. Shortly after, they walked through the door and appeared on a prairie that looked very similar to the one that had appeared in one of Mori's dreams. Moreover, they were surprised because in front of them was a huge house. In fact, Ryder wondered out loud how there was a field in the city and what was with that house, to which Aya replied that it seemed like someone had unique tastes. As for our protagonist, his eyes were literally sparkling at that point, which was noticed by the AI, who told him that he was in a good mood. Afterward, they walked toward the main gate, and Ryder told the others that they had said you could die if you entered the city without an invitation, which was why both of them should stick close to him. Then, while the demon was trying to figure out what to do, our protagonist's attention was caught by something on the other side of the fence. The thing that caught his attention was apparently a person who was watching him from a window inside the building, and Mori didn't waste time and went through the fence to go after him. Luckily, he was small enough to go through the fence, but sadly, that was not the case for Ryder, who began to call the little kid and ask him where he was going. He also reminded him that he had told him that it was dangerous to go in there on his own, which was why he should return. However, Mori didn't listen and ended up entering the building through an open window. That pissed the demon off, who began kicking the main gate while screaming that they should open the door. Inside the building, Mori began to run down a corridor, and his expression showed a lot of expectation. It was clear that he truly believed that he was about to finally meet with his mom. I have seen enough anime to guess that it will not be the case. Finally, he entered a hall and managed to catch up with the person he had seen back at the main gate. Unfortunately, the people inside the hall were not humans but humanoid birds. One of them then asked our protagonist who he was and how he had gotten there, which startled the little boy. Then, the two humanoid birds began discussing what was happening. After all, they hadn't been told they were expecting any guests. The problem was that they didn't know if they should ask about it. Meanwhile, our protagonist was taking advantage of their distraction in order to walk away, when the two humanoid birds noticed that Mori had already begun to run away despite their calls. Shortly after, the little kid entered another hall and found another humanoid creature, but this one had several eyes and wings on its head. Mori then recalled the moment when Radina met with her mom, and he began to disconsolately cry while imagining his encounter with his own mom. At that moment, Ryder arrived, and both he and the creature were stunned by the boy's cry. Sometime later, Aya arrived, and he said that our protagonist, who was sitting beneath a bed, had been really scared. Right after, Ryder told him that he had already taken care of everything, so he could leave that place, and the AI asked him if he was hungry before offering to have a snack together. The demon then proposed to do some drawing. A while later, Ryder left the room where our protagonist was, and the creature with multiple eyes and wings on its face asked how things were, to which the demon replied that things were not good before adding that it looked like Mori needed some time alone. The creature then said that the demon looked really upset, and Ryder quickly admitted it before adding that it was the first time he had seen our protagonist cry like that. After hearing that, the creature said that she guessed that she was not as good as she had imagined, which shocked Ryder, who immediately began to connect the dots. Right after, the creature introduced herself as Miria, Mori's sponsor and the owner of Pay. That night, while Redder was sleeping, our protagonist hit him in the face, waking him up, or at least trying to wake him up, because the demon simply told the little boy to stop doing that before going back to sleep. Mori then decided to walk through a corridor and various places until he arrived at the kitchen. There, he saw some fruits and recalled the moment when Ryder had told him that he should try a certain fruit because it was super rare and delicious. The little boy then stretched to reach the place where the fruits were, and when he was about to grab one, he noticed that Miria was also in the kitchen, watching him. Miria was walking down a corridor when she smelled something and ended up finding our protagonist trying to grab the fruits. As for Mori, when he saw her, he panicked and began to move like a madman, which startled the woman, who ended up walking away. In the end, various fruits fell to the floor and rolled down outside the kitchen. Meanwhile, Miria was outside the kitchen too, and she saw the fruits rolling down the corridor. She then grabbed one and gently threw it to our protagonist, whose first reaction was to panic again. But then, he noticed the fruit and quickly grabbed it before eating it. Right after, another fruit, mysteriously, rolled toward him and he also grabbed it. In the end, a very touched Miria gave the 3 fruits to Mori and kept observing him in secret. The next day, Mori heard voices outside and decided to investigate a little. Apparently, they wanted to see our protagonist, but one of them was afraid that they could wake him up. Moreover, they wanted to know why the kitchen was the way it was at that moment. What they didn't know was that their chatter had indeed woken him up and startled him, so he decided to run away, and while escaping, he bumped into Ryder, who smiled at him while asking him where he was rushing off to and if he had slept well. Right after, Aya reported that he had detected 40% foreign substance on the kid's face before telling our protagonist that he needed to wash up. After hearing that, the young boy hugged Ryder's leg, which flustered him and triggered his tsundere mode, so he began complaining because Mori was doing those things too early in the morning, but the AI knew better and told the demon that his words said one thing, but his body was honest since he had grabbed the kid to hug him. To exacerbate the situation, the floating robot proceeded to recount to Mori all the actions Ryder had taken the previous day. Later, Ryder and Miria were having tea together, and Ryder said that since Mori's language was different from humans, he was not certain, but he added that it seemed our protagonist had left the shelter and was heading in the direction of his home. After hearing that, Miria replied that she had no idea he would go there before adding that she didn't know how to express her gratitude, which made the demon feel embarrassed. Right after, she gave Ryder a box and asked him to open it. He did and was shocked by what was inside. The demon couldn't believe that the woman had just given him a star fragment, especially since he quickly estimated that it should be worth 60,000. In short, he had become rich. She then thanked him for his hard work before adding that their guides would help him on his way out. However, after a brief laugh, Ryder began to recall all the moments he had spent with our protagonist, and he began to feel emotional. In fact, he said that he didn't want to leave yet, which surprised Miria. He then got flustered but managed to say that it was logical if he stayed. After all, Mori really liked him, and the kid just couldn't do without him. So, if the demon suddenly disappeared, our protagonist would be shocked. In short, he proposed to Miria that he could stay by Mori's side until the young boy got used to it. Mira then asked him if he would really do that for them, and he immediately confirmed it before adding that even though they had known each other for a short time, they had been through life and death together. As if to confirm what Ryder had said, the next instant, the hunter who had chased them back in the snowy valley appeared beside the demon, which frightened him. Then Miria introduced the hunter as her aide, Gile. She then apologized to Ryder for Gile's rudeness, before explaining that the hunter had thought that the demon was a kidnapper trying to use Mori. Ryder then regained his composure and admitted that he could see why the hunter would think that way before saying that it was fine. However, Aya didn't miss the chance to tease him, and Ryder told the AI to be quiet before adding that Mori couldn't understand difficult words. Still, the floating robot didn't back down and asked Ryder why he was covering the kid's ears in that situation. Ryder then asked Mori if he had seen that place before and added that he had some things to discuss with Miria and the others. Right after, he suggested that the little kid look around with Aya in the meantime. After hearing that, the floating robot said that it was a wonderful idea and told our protagonist to go. Afterward, Ryder was invited to have a seat and be part of a meeting with Miria, Gile, and several humanoid birds. Once he sat down, the meeting began. Miria said they still hadn't been able to contact Shalam, and Ryder immediately asked who Shalam was. Almost immediately, the other humanoid birds began to mock the demon since, apparently, it was common sense to know the judge. The judge was the master of earth and the ruler of life. 2 arms held the omnipotence of weight, and 3 legs possessed the authority of balance, and including Patch. 7 fingers in total had been granted the power to open black holes for him. As for Shalam, he was one of those 7. Miria or Patch also explained that the black hole Gile used was actually a small piece of hers that he had lent him. She then added that Shalem's domain extended from that mountain range to the river of Ridden. She then indicated the shelter's location on a holographic map that was on display in the hall. That shelter was under Shalem's jurisdiction, so they needed to communicate through him. Afterward, Mira said that even when Mori disappeared, it seemed they couldn't contact Shalem from the shelter. They were also running behind schedule in their search for Mori, because they hadn't received the regular newsletter about him for a few weeks. At that moment, one of the humanoid birds said that it was probably nothing serious before adding that Shalom was an extremely busy person, and in those days, once they fell asleep, it was not simple to meet them. Maria then replied that she would keep sending messages and asked Ryder to stay with Mori without going anywhere outside that place until they contacted Shalom, since they didn't know what was going on, to which Ryder quickly agreed. Almost immediately, another humanoid bird said, in an ominous tone, that they should start the real meeting, which surprised the demon. Nevertheless, in the next instant, that humanoid bird gave Ryder a wooden set containing a coffee cup, a small bowl, a spoon, and a fork. Ryder asked what it was, and the humanoid bird said it was Mori's personal tableware, which he had made the day before. The demon then asked how Mori was supposed to eat with such small tableware. The humanoid bird justified himself by saying that our protagonist was incredibly tiny, only as big as a finger. Ryder replied that this didn't mean the little boy was an ant or something. That humanoid bird ended up leaving the hall while crying, and another humanoid bird got closer while saying that she knew that might happen, which was why she had made plenty. Almost instantly, she made a huge bed appear and said that she had made a giant one for Mori, who liked to stay under it. So with that, they were safe even if our protagonist divided 40 more times. The humanoid bird was excited and asked Ryder what he thought of her present. Almost immediately, a third humanoid bird asked Ryder to look at her present too. At that moment, the demon, who looked embarrassed, thought that those guys were getting excited. Meanwhile, our protagonist had turned that whole building into a huge canvas and was unleashing all his creativity to make a lot of drawings. He then went to play in the kitchen and then to another corridor, where Aya told him the names of various things such as a lamp and a flower pot. Nevertheless, when Mori signaled another thing, the floating robot got confused. After a while, Aya replied that it looked like leftover materials from making something. At that moment, they were looking at some documents on a table inside what seemed to be an office. Apparently, some of those documents were blueprints, and the drawings in them caught Mori's attention, who quickly began to look at them. At that moment, the floating robot said that it seemed that it had been handmade, which confused the little kid. Then, Aya explained that he was talking about our protagonist's cloak. The blueprints they were looking at were the cloaks. It seemed that Miria had made it by herself. Right after, a humanoid bird entered the office and told Mori that she was very glad that he was safe, before adding that they had sweated a lot trying to stop Miss Miria from leaving to search for him. That made our protagonist fidget, and the woman then asked what they were doing, to which Aya replied that they were exploring the mansion. The woman then asked if they liked the place, to which the floating robot replied that it didn't understand how such a building had suddenly appeared in a field in the city. The humanoid bird then explained that the place was a villa before adding that Miss Miria had made it herself, and that she had said that she wanted to try to understand our protagonist. Later, our protagonist left the office with Aya and met with Miria, but when she saw him, the kid still panicked and left, which made the woman feel disheartened, which was noticed by Redder, who began to reflect on the matter. He then told Miria that, for now, it would be best if she and Mori became friends, to which the woman, who was fidgeting, replied that it would be wonderful. Right after, Aya asked the demon if he had any good ideas, and he suddenly thought of something. Afterward, the operation code named Befriend Mori began. The first step was to tempt him with snacks. Miria then carried a tray full of cookies and was calling our protagonist. Sadly, when she found him, various humanoid birds were already pampering him with cookies. After seeing that, the floating robot admitted that he had forgotten that everyone could do that, and the demon decided to go to the next step. That step was to show interest in favorite items. A while later, Miria was holding the speaking doll while looking adorable, and Ryder told her to casually walk by in front, to which she agreed. Sadly, when Mori saw her, he panicked again and she quickly apologized to him, saying that he would give it back right away. Step 3 was to show a familiar appearance, and they decided that Miria would imitate Ryder. So, Aya made the bike appear, and the demon taught her how to drive, which ended up way wrong. After seeing the result, Aya said that he had done most of the driving in recent times. See people. Do not let a machine drive for you. Step 4 was trying to recreate how Mori had become friends with Ryder and Aya. They made Gile play the villain, and Miria was supposed to rescue our protagonist when he was in danger. Right after, Gile began to coddle the kid, and Ryder went nuts because that was not what they had agreed on. There were many attempts after that, but they all ended in failure. That night it rained cats and dogs, and a strange light woke up our protagonist, who began to look at it with a surprised expression. Moment, lightning illuminated the entire place through the window, terrifying our protagonist. However, despite that, he decided to leave the room and explore the mansion. Meanwhile, Ryder was very focused, working on something. Back with Mori, he kept walking through a corridor while looking scared. Then, he saw an open door and noticed that the office on the other side was lit. He then decided to go there, and inside he saw Miria, who was sitting on a rocking chair near a fireplace. She was asleep, and our protagonist mustered his courage to enter the office. There, he noticed an open book on the floor, and that piqued his curiosity. He got closer and began to look at what was written in it. The page that could be seen was about child behavior observation, but Mori seemed confused while seeing the page. Abruptly, a massive thunderclap shook the little boy, causing him to leap into Maria's embrace. He was about to cry when the woman hugged him despite still being asleep. That caught the child by surprise, but he didn't struggle and let her cuddle him. Then, our protagonist recalled the dreams he had had and all the things Miria had given him, including the letters she had written. It was then that he thought that Miria was the mother he had dreamed of. A while later, Miria woke up and was surprised because she didn't know when she had fallen asleep. Then, she thought that she had to go back to her room, but it was then that she noticed that Mori was asleep in her lap. She then wondered why he was there and how long he had been there. She also wondered what she should do and became very flustered. She even thought that she had to call Ryder and Aya. However, at some point, she managed to regain her composure and, while blushing, decided to cuddle him. The next day, Ryder woke up, and Aya praised him before saying that it took longer than expected, to which he replied that he had run it for quite a while back then. Apparently, he was fixing the bike after taking it to its limits while being chased by Gile. Then he told Aya that they should avoid overdoing it for a while, and the floating robot quickly agreed. At that moment, various humanoid birds appeared and greeted the demon while smiling at him. Some even asked him if he had slept well and if he was up early. Suddenly, a sound could be heard, and the demon said that he would go get something and left the place. Then, while walking down some stairs, he said that he had to give it to Miria. He referred to some mail that had apparently arrived. However, when he took it, he realized that it was a flyer reporting him as a dangerous person, which shocked him, although Aya was apparently amused by it. To exacerbate the situation, Miria's sudden appearance frightened him. He immediately hid the flyer and nervously greeted Miria before telling her that she seemed to be in a good mood that morning, which made her blush while asking him if that was really the case. Right after, she asked him if he was busy that day, to which he replied that he was free before adding that he had nothing but time. She said that it was wonderful before explaining something about Mori's clothes. Unfortunately, he was not paying attention because he thought he had forgotten that he was currently wanted. He had been so surprised to see Mori crying that he completely forgot it. Still, he managed to reply coherently to Miria, who then asked him if they could get ready to go out right away. That shocked him, and he asked where they were going, and she replied that they were going to the center, which shocked him more. Still, he tried to confirm if she was referring to the city center, and she confirmed it while showing the best radiant smile one could see. At that moment, the demon truly believed that he was screwed. Wow, I think I am falling in love with her. Ryder, you have to come clean. You shot that guy to protect Mori. I am sure Miria will understand. Sometime later, Miria, Ryder, Aya, and Mori arrived at a luxurious store where a group of salesgirls welcomed them. The demon then asked Miria where they were, and she replied that she often went there to get her clothes tailored. Right after, one of the salesgirls said that they could first see the design virtually and try it on. Moreover, modifications could be made right on the spot. Then, another salesgirl added that since they specialized in 100% custom-made clothing, you should go there in person. That was their unique philosophy. Afterward, Miria said that human clothes were difficult to find, while our protagonist was clinging to her clothes. She then added that she had thought it might be better to leave it to professionals rather than making them herself. At that moment, a salesgirl approached our protagonist, who immediately got tense. The salesgirl noticed it and said that they had heard a lot about the little boy, before adding that they were aware that they were quite intimidating, but they had anticipated that. They had even received countermeasures from Miss Miria. Almost immediately, they began to show cookies and crayons to Mori, who was instantly captivated by them. In fact, Redder told him that it was dangerous to follow so easily, to which Miria immediately agreed before calling our protagonist because he was starting to misbehave. Meanwhile, Ryder was thinking that he was completely terrified because he had never expected there would be a dedicated portal extending all the way there. In the end, the rich were really different. Still, it was fortunate they hadn't run into anyone on the way there. Miria then asked if they should go, and Ryder asked Aya where the cameras were. Sadly, the AI replied that precise scanning was difficult due to security measures. However, there was one object, including a lens, behind Ryder, 2 in front, and security personnel within 5 men outside the door. After hearing that, he began to wonder what he should do. He thought he could stay quiet for the time being and return to the mansion, but then he considered the possibility of quickly packing and leaving the place. Suddenly, our protagonist appeared wearing cute bear pajamas, which deeply shocked Ryder because Mori looked adorable. In fact, Aya asked him why he was getting frustrated. The AI then asked Miria why she was crying because the woman couldn't hold back her tears. Miria then began to touch a virtual panel in front of her and Ryder while asking the demon his opinion about the next piece of clothing. Right after, our protagonist could be seen wearing clothes that resembled Maria's, and the woman had to cover her face with her hands, trying again in vain to hold back her tears. Right after, Ryder said that he wanted to give it a try and began to change Mori's clothes. Shortly after, the little kid ended up looking like a delinquent vampire. He was even riding a toy 4-wheeled bike that had a cow skull for handlebars. Obviously, that pleased the demon a lot. Nevertheless, Aya said that both Ryder and Miria lacked sense and decided to give it a try. Almost immediately, Mori ended up wearing something that looked like a snail, and the floating robot quickly said that it was perfect. Afterward, the salesgirls helped Mori to change his clothes into something that resembled Miria's attire, including some fake little wings on his head. Then, they prepared another set of clothes that made the little kid look like a rich kid from a movie, and it was Ryder's turn to carry our protagonist. It was then that Ryder realized that the wanted poster was the strange-looking creature's fault, not his. Sure, firing a gun in town was illegal, but he had done it because Mori had been kidnapped, so he believed that they would understand. Besides, that bastard had too many hands. Right after, he told Maria that he had something to say. "Oak, we might have a smart character here. Let's hope nothing goes wrong." Nevertheless, when he was about to tell her the truth, he recalled what the strange-looking creature had told him about how someone as dangerous as he could not raise a human. He also recalled when Miria had invited him to leave. In the end, he decided to hide the truth and said that in one of the letters she had written for Mori, she had said it meant, "lovely circle," and he wanted to know what that meant. After hearing the question, Miria took out a picture that showed a prairie and showed it to Ryder while telling him that the kid in the picture was Mori. She then explained that, as usual, she was processing documents, and there was a letter from Shalom. The letter looked like a flyer being distributed in the city, so she was about to ignore it, but luckily, she didn't. Right after, she realized that it was some kind of virtual reality video, and when she played it, she could see our protagonist in that prairie. She was shocked when she saw Mori, and her first impression was that he was too round. She even wondered how something could be that round. Maria then added that they said they had filmed from far away because Mori was afraid of the camera and that, at the moment, he was apparently watching an ant. In the end, when the woman came to her senses, she had already completed the sponsorship process and was choosing a gift for our protagonist. At that moment, she blushed and admitted that her story was a bit boring, which Ryder quickly denied before saying that it was a good start. In the meantime, Aya was discussing with the salesgirls all the details about Mori's clothes, even what kind of material they should use. Suddenly, the lights went off, and one of the salesgirls immediately apologized, but when they turned on the light, something deeply shocked our protagonist. Almost immediately, Mori ran away and left the store, which shocked Miria and Ryder. Outside, the little kid bumped into a weird-looking person who was about to stomp him. The demon then cried Mori's name and went to his rescue, but Aya told the demon that if he went outside, he would put himself at risk. In fact, almost immediately, Ryder noticed a floating camera nearby. However, when the camera was about to identify him, Miria appeared beside him and covered him while using her black hole power to create some kind of wormhole that allowed our protagonist to reach them. Immediately thereafter, Miria and Ryder asked Mori if he was fine and if he was hurt anywhere. Aya then said that the little boy's pulse was elevated, and Miria noticed that Mori was sweating profusely, which worried them. In the next instant, our protagonist began to cry, causing Miria and Ryder to hug him tightly. "Ok, I am really beginning to love this little family. Ladies and gentlemen, the Miriider or Ratariria ship has officially become real in my mind. Still, I wonder what caused that strong reaction in the boy." Sometime later, back in the mansion, Mori was sleeping while holding a letter, and Miria was sitting on the bed beside him, saying that it didn't seem to be just because of the light. Ryder quickly agreed, adding that the light from the gun was much brighter, but the kid had never reacted like that before. Aya then added that even when Ryder had accidentally burned down all the trees, which looked incredibly bright, Mori hadn't reacted like that. Of course, that revelation embarrassed both Miria and the demon. The woman then said that they had placed more flames than electric lights in the mansion, because records showed that when Mori's friend was with them, they only used oil lamps or candles. Right after, Aya said that there was a record of them reacting sensitively to spotlights before, and Ryder quickly recalled that it had been back in the cave when he used the flashlight. The demon then noticed that back at the store, it had suddenly gotten bright too, just like in the cave. Moreover, the store's light was a circular beam. After hearing that, Miria began to reflect on the matter, especially on the circular light part. Sometime later, Maria was in her office reading various books, then she met with Ryder in a corridor while Mori played with Aya. Afterward, the woman showed both Ryder and the floating robot a book while explaining something to them. A while later, Miria and Ryder began to cover the walls of a hall while Mori made some drawings. That night, Miria, Ryder, and Aya improvised a projection room in one of the halls, and all the people who lived in the mansion, plus Mori, went there to watch what the trio had prepared for them. A picture was shown on the wall, and Aya began to tell a story about 3 little pigs and a wolf that lived in a forest. Aya was the narrator, while Ryder and Miria represented the characters with shadows. While doing that, the demon recalled when Miria had suggested doing a shadow play. She wanted to start with a square-shaped light beam and slowly make it circular as they focused on the play. The idea was to create pleasant memories that the little boy could associate with a circular light. Sadly, in the best part of the story, Aya noticed that he couldn't read because Mori had made drawings in that part, covering the letters. So, the floating robot decided to improvise and made the 3 pigs build a mecha robot to fight the giant wolf, which confused and shocked both Miria and the demon. The show must go on, we don't judge. At that moment, Mori, who was tense at the beginning, began to laugh out loud. So Aya took that as a sign to keep going, and he continued improvising, causing a headache to Ryder and Miria, who had to represent the characters and scenes. What none of them knew was that at that moment, someone had arrived and demanded to see Miria. Following day, the kid opened his eyes because the bright sunlight was dazzling. Right after, Aya greeted our protagonist before adding, while patting the boy's head, that he had woken up earlier than usual. Afterward, Mori did some exercise before trying to wake up Ryder, who was sleeping beside him. However, the demon asked the kid, while hugging him, to let him sleep 10 more minutes. A while later, Mori left the room, leaving Ryder and Aya, who were busy bickering. Outside the room, the humanoid birds began to greet Mori while asking him if he had slept well. One of them even told him that it was dangerous to run, but he didn't listen because he wanted to see Miria so she could cuddle him, which she gladly did. That day marked 1 month since the child had started staying at the mansion, and he was enjoying his time there a lot, even if that implied doing a lot of mischief and getting on the nerves of the personnel. Still, that same personnel cared a lot for our protagonist, especially when he was hungry. They did their best to feed him properly. Perhaps they fed him more than they should have, but Mori didn't seem to care. Even Giles took his time to pamper the little boy, although he was clearly inexperienced, and washed the kid like he was doing laundry, according to Aya. Of course, Miria was not immune to the kid's charms, and when he went to her office, she quickly left all her work aside to play with him. In fact, when Ryder saw them play, he teased her by saying that they were studying hard. After all, they were surrounded by all of Mori's drawings. Miria then said that she was trying to copy the letters written on the word cards, and Aya added that they were all wrong. Right after, she showed the demon a drawing while asking him to look closely at it before adding that it was a bit similar. But the AI immediately replied that her judgment was getting clouded. The little kid then began to take out all the books from the bookshelves, and Aya offered Mori to read them to him. The kid then showed the book to the AI, and Aya began to read it for a little while before saying that it seemed like some kind of phenomenon. Ryder then added that the book talked about division before adding that he had already told that to the floating robot. Still, the AI said that he didn't know the details. Right after, Miria explained that the method varied slightly depending on the species, and there could be differences of hundreds of years, but basically, when the body's lifespan was up, the cells went into sleep to return to their original state. So, they divided from 1 to 1 or from 1 to many. For example, Miria came from the judge's 4th finger. The book also said that you needed a safe place because you became completely defenseless when entering Pyrop. It was then that the floating robot finally understood. Miria then smiled and asked how it was before adding that it might be a bit difficult for Mori. It was then that they noticed that our protagonist was not with them. In fact, he had left the room and was scribbling on the corridor walls again. However, the personnel didn't take it to heart and even asked Mori to help them clean the wall as a way to teach him that he shouldn't scribble there. Of course, our protagonist didn't like that at all, but he was making a great effort not to cry. In fact, Ryder teased him by saying that he had thought the little boy wasn't going to cry that day. Then, Miria told him that the walls were not a place for drawing before asking if he was going to do that again. Nevertheless, since Mori didn't reply, Ryder said that if he refused to listen, Giles was going to go after him. I have to admit that Giles could play the part of the boogeyman. At that moment, mail arrived and it was Ryder's turn to freak out. In fact, he immediately ran to the door to get it, which surprised Miria. Shortly after, he gave an envelope to the woman, who thanked him. As for the demon, he thought that the mail didn't have any wanted posters, which was good. Nevertheless, when Miria read the content of the envelope, she suddenly asked him if they could talk for a moment, and her expression looked very ominous, which made him feel nervous. He then began to wonder if he had seen things wrong, or if she had noticed something. He also wondered if he should speak up first to try to soften things. However, before he could decide, Miria showed him something, and when he asked what it was, she replied that it was a stone that opened the door to the judge's chambers, which startled him. Mira then explained that she had contacted the judge, shocking the demon, who began to wonder whether she had reported him and how long she had known he was a wanted man. He then began to consider the possibility of her trying to make him let his guard down up to that moment so she could throw him in jail. However, again, she interrupted his thoughts and asked him if he had ever thought about joining Patch. The question caught Ryder off guard, and Miria noticed it. So she said that she knew that it was too sudden, and he quickly tried to deny it. She then explained that she had sent a message to the judge asking to make Mori a member of the pack, and she had just gotten a reply telling them to go there. Right after, she added that there weren't many precedents regarding humans, so she believed that they wanted to see for themselves. Afterward, she admitted that she hadn't heard from Shalom yet, but since they had always encouraged her to do those kinds of things, she believed that they would probably be happy. She then dropped the bomb by saying that if Mori was registered as a pack member, what happened in town would officially become an attack on the pack, which meant that she could strongly protect the demon's safety. In fact, she was planning to lift his wanted status before he joined the pack, which, of course, shocked him. In short, do not try to hide things from a woman. Just don't. You will never win that game. Ryder quickly regained his composure and asked her when she had known about his status, and she replied that she had known from the beginning. That astonished him, and he told her that she was knowingly letting a wanted person into her home, a fugitive. She then replied that she had done it because Mori was crying. After all, it really seemed like he depended on Ryder a lot. Miria even said that if anything happened, she believed that she could subdue the strange-looking creature, to which Ryder agreed because the black hole's power was not to be trifled with. Afterward, she reminded the demon that she had told her how he first met Mori, and she believed that it was because of that reason that our protagonist was wanted. Miria also added that it would be easy to secretly deal with the strange creature, but that wouldn't make Ryder's wanted status disappear, and he agreed with her again. Right after, she gave him the stone while saying that it might be a less exciting life than when he was traveling, but she would like him to stay with them. Then, she asked him to give it some serious thought, and he agreed with her for the third time in a row. Afterward, Ryder found Mori sleeping in the middle of a corridor and quickly carried him. Then, Aya began to tease him because his expression clearly showed that something excellent had happened, which triggered the tsundere mode of the demon. Sometime later, Mori was looking very neat with new clothes, and the humanoid birds were saying that first impressions were important, which was why they had put in some effort. Miria then told our protagonist not to be nervous, even though she looked very nervous herself. The little kid was having some trouble carrying his bag, and Ryder told him that he would take care of it. He then told him that even though he couldn't go with the kid, he would be close by. Mira then told our protagonist that if it seemed too difficult, he could ask to postpone it before asking him if he was sure he would be all right. Immediately thereafter, she opened the portal door and told the others that she needed to go first and greet them before adding that Ryder and Mori had to wait and then do as they had practiced. A while later, the kid mustered his courage and entered through the portal while Ryder and the humanoid birds monitored everything. Miria appeared in what looked like a huge temple and walked through an open corridor until she met the judge. As for our protagonist, he was with Giles, who told him that he had to look only at Miria and go straight ahead. Right after, a circular light was pointed at the little kid, but he didn't flinch and began walking while Ryder and the humanoid birds were celebrating, because they were seeing the results of playing shadow games every weekend. However, while he was running toward Miria, he turned his head to the side and looked at a being that was standing there, whose face looked like a circle of light. At that moment, something triggered inside our protagonist, who seemed to begin to panic. Our protagonist tripped and fell, which put Ryder and Mori on alert, but none of them could help the little kid at that moment. The being then asked him if he was all right and extended his hand toward Mori, grabbing our protagonist's forearm. Miria immediately told the being to wait and to stop grabbing the kid, but before anybody could react, Mori fiercely bit the being's forearm, which shocked the being, especially because it began to hurt. Right after, Miria tried to use her black hole, but someone quickly told her that she couldn't use it there. In the end, the judge had to intervene and grab the kid by putting him into a sphere of energy. Then, while the sphere moved toward the judge, he told Miria that she needed to explain the whole situation. Sometime later at the mansion, Ryder was very upset by the decision the others had made. Miria then said that they had judged that Mori was too unstable, and they thought that it might be because of her. So, it seemed they had decided to protect him in the judge's domain. Of course, after hearing that, Ryder demanded to know on what grounds they were saying such things, and Aya had to step in to tell him to calm down. Shortly after, Maria recalled the being that caused the problem and wondered out loud how Shalam's search party had gotten into the judge's chamber. Apparently, she was repeating the question they had asked her back there. After all, it seemed they didn't understand how a child from Shalam's domain had been able to go all the way there, since that was not a distance a human infant could cross alone. At that moment, Ryder asked the humanoid birds who the people who were interrogating Miria were, and they told him that they were the judge's 3 legs. Back with Miria, before she could reply, they accused her of secretly using her aid to take one child out of the shelter, since she wanted a human kid badly. Almost immediately, she said it was absurd and added that Mori had escaped Shalam's domain under his own power. They then asked how a human could possibly break through Shalam's boundaries, and she replied that he had made clothes for him using Rotter's fabric. Right after, they asked her if she had done that purposely for her own goals, since she knew Shalam's boundary had weakened, and she vehemently denied it before saying that she had simply seen records that infants could weaken for trivial reasons. In the end, Miria had decided to give it to our protagonist, hoping he would grow up healthy, and she emphasized that she had no other intentions. She then explained that they had been worried because they hadn't received status reports on Mori from the shelter for months. So, her aide had just gone to check on his condition and discovered that our protagonist had disappeared, so they started tracking him. In fact, that was the first time she had heard about Shalam's boundary weakening. She then said that a traveler had taken our protagonist to the city. Right after, they asked her where that traveler was at that moment, to which she replied that he was no longer in the city, which meant, to them, that there was no way to prove her claims afterward. They told her that they had heard that she had lost the child in the center once, and that the kid had almost gotten trampled under someone's feet after bumping into a citizen. Not to mention that she had even used her power. In short, the kid, who was crying at that moment, could have been seriously hurt. After hearing that, she admitted that she had been careless and apologized. Right after, they said that our protagonist was unqualified, before adding that they should send him back to human society. Still, they wanted to know what the shelter was doing while a human had left its domain. In fact, because of that, they decided that they couldn't send Mori back to such a place. One of them then proposed to send him to the restricted area, which surprised Miria, who immediately asked them to consider the emotional aspect of a child having to adapt to a new environment again. She explained that even though it might look similar to them, that area was inhabited by humans completely different from those Mori was used to. Sadly, communication with our protagonist was impossible since he didn't have the ability to use language, so they asked Miria for her opinion, to which she explained that even though his language skills might be lacking, he was a child who knew how to properly express emotions. She then asked them to allow her to speak with him, and they replied that they would consider it. Right after, they said that the judge prioritized the happiness and safety of human children before asking everyone to withdraw for that day. When Miria was leaving, the judge allowed her to meet with Mori, and she immediately cuddled him. While she was doing it, she could hear a voice that told her that they did not walk the same days as them, before adding that the silence that came when light was spent was endlessly long. Finally, the voice asked her if she could truly endure its end while showing Miria an image of her hugging a corpse. Sometime later, the humanoid birds were talking about what they should do since Miria seemed very down. After all, it had been over a week, and she was barely eating. Suddenly, Ryder said that perhaps he should speak at the next hearing, but one humanoid bird replied that it would only make things worse. Giles then asked him if he understood why Miria had lied in front of the judge before adding that everyone in the desert knew the demon was a reckless outlaw. So, when even Miria was under suspicion, there was no way that they believed what Ryder said. Not to mention that creations capable of acquiring knowledge were illegal, and they assumed Ryder could be in a tight spot because of it. In fact, Giles told him that if they acted without a plan, the judge would just confiscate Aya. Obviously, that pissed the demon off a lot, and he began yelling at them, asking who they thought they were and how they dared to even say it before adding that he had created Aya, which meant that she was his. Wait. Is Aya female? That's a huge deal. Aya then told Ryder that they were only suggesting there was a possibility of that happening before asking him to calm down. Right after, another piece of mail arrived, and Ryder went to take it. Then, after reading the documents inside, his expression changed, and he immediately went to speak with Miria. Once he arrived at her office, he informed her that they had received a response to the visitation request he had sent earlier, before adding that they would let them see Mori. Sometime later, the humanoid birds gave Miria some items and told her that they had mostly prepared foods that Mori liked, along with some homemade juice. They were even concerned, asking if they had given her enough toys. They also asked if they should add some more cookies, since they had said that they would help with toothbrushing. Miria then thanked everyone while looking touched, and she proceeded to open the portal to go visit Mori while Ryder watched her intently. She then arrived in a futuristic city and boarded what seemed to be a subway. Once inside, she took out a drawing Mori had made showing her, Ryder, and Aya. She then recalled the moment when our protagonist showed the drawing to her and told herself that she needed to stay strong. Afterward, she arrived in a room where Mori was lying on the floor while connected to various hoses, which shocked her. Immediately thereafter, she asked what was going on there, to which a member of the staff replied that since Subject 1125 Mori had been refusing meals, they were forcibly supplying nutrients, and nobody in that advanced society has realized that they were treating the little kid worse than when he was with Miria. The woman then asked how long our protagonist had been refusing to eat, and the person replied that it had been that way since he arrived there. He also informed her that the cloak had been confiscated, as it could breach security. The worker even said that Mori was extremely violent, before adding that there was not a single staff member he hadn't bitten, which was why they had completely banned physical contact to minimize stimulation. Oh, I am getting very upset here. They are being barbaric at this point. Finally, the worker told her that when Subject 1125 woke up, she could talk to him from there before asking to sign some form. However, she seemed absorbed in her thoughts, so the worker had to call her again. Right after, Miria reacted and told her that he had taken food that Mori liked, before adding that he might eat those since she had cut them into easy-to-eat sizes. She then asked the worker to put them in his hand one by one. She also asked the worker to make sure Mori didn't drink the juice too quickly before giving him a toy our protagonist often played with. Right after, she left the room while saying that she would be back shortly. Shortly after, Mori woke up and he somewhat realized that Miria had been there because he began to call her while crying out loud, which shocked the worker who tried in vain to appease the little kid while some system administered some sedative to the boy. This situation is disgusting. How can those barbarians be the judges? Sometime later, in the mansion, one of the humanoid birds asked another where Miria was, to which the other replied that she was still in her room. The first one then asked if she should bring her a meal and ask a few questions, but the other yelled, saying that she shouldn't. She also added that she had never seen Miria make that face before, so she believed that if they bothered her, the mansion might explode. Right after, Ryder walked past them and went directly to Miria's office, despite the warnings of the humanoid birds. Shortly after, the demon arrived at her office and told her that they needed to talk, but the woman apologized before telling him that she wanted to be alone. He then noticed a letter of resignation on her desk, and he asked her if she was really giving up on Mori, which pissed him off, especially because she had gone to see our protagonist that day. She just couldn't understand how she could possibly give up on the little kid, and went as far as to ask her if Mori had been just some object to her that she could easily hand over to someone else. At that moment, an energy explosion occurred, and a black energy surrounded Miria, who looked extremely ominous when she told him not to make her angry, before adding that she was just choosing what was best for Mori at that moment. Nevertheless, he didn't back down and asked her if giving up Mori was what she called the best option before asking her if her idea of the best choice was to run away from that fight. Almost immediately, she yelled at him that she was not running away. Sorry for interrupting that heartfelt conversation, but you are indeed running away, dearie. He then asked her why he was doing that, and she replied that Mori was refusing to eat. Ryder then demanded she say that again, and she replied that Mori had been lying there without eating anything since the hearing, with some damn nutrition tubes hanging all over. Miria then began to cry, and her power covered the entire office, causing everything around them to be pure black. It looked like she had transported all of them to another place. She then said that she had been greedy since she knew human lifespans were short. Moreover, using the excuse that she couldn't contact Shalam, she hadn't sent Mori back to the shelter since she wanted to create a connection to stay together longer. She had thought that Mori would surely be happy too. However, at that moment, she was questioning herself if all of that was actually just for her own happiness. Not to mention that the longer she dragged out the fight, the weaker Mori would become, and if Mori got sick because of it, or worse, if he died, she would blame herself. At that point, she just couldn't hold back her tears. Suddenly, Ryder grabbed her by her shoulders and called her an idiot before telling her that she shouldn't say such weak things. He then said that she seemed to have forgotten that Mori was very tiny, which surprised even Aya. He then explained that she had said it herself, Mori was so tiny that one wrong move could be fatal. In fact, even if they looked sturdy, babies were like that. He then said that they had first seen Mori in the desert, which meant that it was clearly not the beginning. At that moment, a confused Aya asked Ryder what he was trying to say, and he replied that even someone like him would have a hard time crossing that long distance to get there. But Mori, with his tiny body, had done it because he wanted to meet her and be together. In fact, he had never seen the look in the kid's eyes saying he wanted to go back. Afterward, he asked her if she was going to make all of his efforts meaningless. Miria then replied that she had received a call that day, and they had told her that they would find suitable human parents for Mori in the restricted area, before adding that humans said that a child should be raised by a mother. So, a crying Miria asked what she was supposed to do. Immediately thereafter, Ryder yelled at her, asking who cared about it before adding that they could do it to the mother thing, which shocked her. Wow, just wow. I am totally rooting for this family.
Simo Miria, let's go!
Sometime later, Aya told Ryder and Miria that they had to double-check what they were going to do. Ryder then said that to win the judgment, they needed to argue that they were more awesome than any mom from the restricted area. After hearing that, one of the humanoid birds asked what they should excel at, and the AI replied that, according to Miria's data, humans had genders and reproduced by producing offspring. So it seemed they considered the best situation to be when two adult humans, bound by a contract called marriage, raised a child together. They referred to those two as a couple or parents. Right after, Ryder told Maria that they were a couple, which made her blush. Still, she said that the word sounded cute somehow. Meanwhile, one of the humanoid birds noticed that Giles was very angry at that moment. Okay, now we have a love triangle here. Afterward, Aya asked Ryder if he wanted to be the mom or the dad, and then she added that, for reference, when asked if they preferred mom or dad, 89% of humans of Mori's age answered mom. Of course, after hearing that, both Miria and Ryder said that they wanted to be mom. The demon then asked if there could be couples with two moms, and the floating robot replied that even though they didn't have much data, he believed that it should be fine. Afterward, another humanoid bird suggested that they should emphasize that they were strong, since he had heard that humans liked fighting. Aya, who was reading a book, quickly replied that the text stated humans also measured strength by wealth. Almost immediately, Ryder responded that if that was the case, they had nothing to worry about. However, the floating robot replied that the demon was broke, which pissed the demon off a lot, and both Ryder and Aya ended up fighting each other. Meanwhile, one of the humanoid birds asked Miria if there was something they could prove, which confused the woman, so the other suggested that they could prove that they cared for Mori more. After hearing that, Miria asked how they could prove it, and the humanoid bird replied that she believed that she had hugged Mori about 600 times. Another humanoid bird added that he believed that Mori had stepped on him about 400 times, which embarrassed the others. Then, another humanoid bird on the verge of tears confessed that she believed that she had only scolded Mori. Almost immediately, she went and kneeled in front of a corner of the office while crying disconsolately and saying that she should have just let our protagonist draw on the walls all he wanted. After seeing that, another humanoid bird nervously wondered out loud if they had done a lot to help Mori, to which another quickly replied that he had done his best with Mori's meals, before adding that the little kid had never left anything he made. At that moment, another humanoid bird asked Miria what had happened to what she had made last time, and the woman replied that it had been sent back because our protagonist was refusing to eat. That comment led to more people crying in a certain corner of the office. Afterward, someone looked at a pile of books and asked if that was all the data they had gotten from the shelter, and another one confirmed it. However, that second humanoid bird added that since communication hadn't been smooth from the start, he was not even sure if they had received proper data. After all, it took too long to read, even after translation. At that moment, someone noticed that one of the books was missing a couple of pages. Time passed, and suddenly someone said that they didn't have enough information before adding that. At that rate, they wouldn't be able to win. After hearing that, Maria declared that she needed to meet Shalom. After hearing that, one of the humanoid birds said that he was still not answering their calls, and another one, shocked, asked if she was planning to go there without an invitation. That astonished even Giles, who quickly told Miria that doing that was too dangerous. Nevertheless, she insisted, saying that they were limited by the data they had at that moment, before adding that Shalom knew the most about humans among them. Plus, where Mori was found was right next to Shalom's domain, which meant that Shalom might have information about Mori from before he was rescued. Still, one of the humanoid birds said that the place where Shalom might be at that moment was the playground, which Miria confirmed. After hearing that, Ryder, who had finally stopped fighting Aya, asked what the playground was, and Miria replied that it was a space Shalom had created before preparing a separate domain for humans. She then added that Shalom was the quirkiest among the seven. After all, he had used all his power just to gather things he liked. However, as she spoke, the demon envisioned his own playground, picturing himself on a couch, toasting with Aya while watching Mori play over a rainbow. "Hey, where's Miria? You've got to include Miria in your playground." At that moment, Gile interrupted the demon's thoughts and said that it was not that simple, before adding that if you stayed too long in a space opened by a power without the owner's permission, your sense of self couldn't withstand it, and you would end up going mad. Of course, the same power could block it, but still, entering without an invitation was too dangerous. Not to mention that they didn't know exactly where Shalem was on the playground. However, Miria quickly replied that despite all that, she had to go there. Almost immediately, Ryder not only agreed with her, but also told her they should get ready as soon as possible, which surprised Miria because she had not expected him to accompany her. She asked him if he was going with her, and he quickly confirmed it before adding that they couldn't just sit around anymore. After all, they were the moms. Just for the record, being a father is also cool. Obviously, that touched Miria deeply, but before she could say anything else, Giles said that he wanted to go, too, before adding that he would make sure his lord was comfortable. Nevertheless, a humanoid bird replied that, in the end, Miria would have to protect both of them. So she asked the woman whether those two would really be helpful, and the woman confirmed. She then explained that if she gave Giles a bit of her black hole, he could operate separately in the playground for about a day, before adding that if they split up, they could find Shalem faster. Right after, she asked Ryder and Aya to lead the way since she had never traveled before, and the demon and the AI immediately agreed. Sometime later, the box that Miria had given to Ryder was opened, and the demon said that he had never thought that he would see a star fragment being used in his lifetime. To which one of the humanoid birds replied that they had tried very hard to stop him from using it to find Mori. Aya then asked what they were going to do with it, to which Miria replied that it would take them where they wanted to go. Almost immediately, the woman crushed it with her hand, adding that since they didn't have a token or invitation, they didn't know where it would open. Right after, she told the others to stay close to her. A black hole appeared beneath them shortly after, engulfing the trio and Aya. Then, they suddenly appeared above a huge sea. Obviously, they ended up falling, but luckily, they managed to reach the coast, and their journey to find Shalem officially began.